Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving into something that, well, we literally all take completely for granted every single day: writing. But we aren't going to just look at it as some sudden brilliant invention of literature. Actually, scratch that. We're going to reframe the whole thing. We're going to trace a slow 10,000-year evolution, looking at writing as a data processing technology. It's a system that evolved, step by step, to handle larger and larger amounts of information with ever greater abstraction. So, to get us started, I want you to really think about this question. What is humanity's absolute oldest data processing technology? I mean, if we roll the clock all the way back, millennia before the invention of microchips or computers, or honestly, even paper, what did early humans actually use to process information?
Well, the answer is accounting. Yeah, seriously. Long before we had beautiful poetry or epic literature, we basically just had frustrated accountants trying to keep track of someone else's sheep. It turns out that our primary technology for collecting, storing, and retrieving information actually started as an ancient accounting tool for handling data about real-world goods.
As you'll see today, we're going to be climbing this massive abstraction ladder of writing that spans millennia. We'll kick things off with 3D tokens way back in 8000 BC, then move to 2D pictography around 3500 BC, make a huge leap into phonetics and logography by 3000 BC, and finally land on the alphabet around 1500 BC.
Section 1. Prehistoric accounting with tokens.
Okay, let's travel back to the Near East, right around 8000 BC. Here we find humanity's earliest code, these little 3D geometric clay tokens. And it's wild, but we can actually trace the Mesopotamian cuneiform script back to these exact tokens without any break over a 10,000-year span. Used for about 5 millennia, these tokens worked in strict one-to-one correspondence. Every single token shape was semantic, meaning it stood for exactly one concept. A cone? That meant a small measure of grain. A sphere was a large measure. An ovoid represented a jar of oil. So if you wanted to record 3 jars of oil, you literally just kept 3 ovoid tokens. And the really important thing here is that this system was completely independent of spoken language. Whether you spoke Sumerian or any other ancient dialect, an ovoid meant a jar of oil. No syntax, no grammar, just a literal physical representation of data.
Section 2. From 3D to 2D.
Now, as these ancient societies got bigger, the administrative headaches got bigger too. And this brings us to a major technological leap around 3500 BC. It's a classic problem solution moment. See, accountants started placing these tokens inside hollow clay balls, basically ancient envelopes, to keep a secure record of a debt. But there was a pretty glaring flaw. Once you sealed that clay envelope, you couldn't see the tokens inside to verify the account anymore. So some absolute genius of an accountant decided, hey, what if we press the tokens into the outside of the wet clay envelope before we seal them inside? A cone left a wedge mark, a sphere left a circular mark. Boom! Suddenly, you didn't need to break the envelope open to read the data. Those simple impressions on the outside of the envelope, those were the very first two-dimensional signs of writing.
Let's see how this builds. By 3100 BC, people realized, we don't actually need the hollow envelopes or the 3D tokens at all. A solid clay cushion, or tablet, with signs drawn right onto it worked perfectly. But there's a catch. Tracing out 33 individual jars of oil one by one, that is incredibly tedious. So they came up with abstract numerals. Instead of drawing 33 separate oil jar pictures, they just incised one pictograph from jar of oil and then pressed in 3 circles to represent tens and 3 wedges for the ones. This semantic division between the actual item being counted and the number itself, that is a massive leap in human abstraction, not to mention a huge economy of signs.
Section 3. The leap to sound. Around 3000 BC, writing took a dramatic turn. It shifted away from this purely visual framework used for tracking goods and plunged right into the oral world of human speech. To emulate spoken language, early writers started using logography. Now, this is where a sign refers to a single word. Because Sumerian was mostly monosyllabic, they could use easily drawn pictures to represent words that sounded like what they actually wanted to write. It's exactly like a rebus puzzle. For example, if you wanted to write the English name Neil, you could just draw a picture of bent knees, representing the sound Neil. Well, the Sumerians did this exact same thing. to write the common name An gives life. They combined a star, which was the logogram for the god An, and an arrow, simply because the Sumerian words for arrow and life just happened to be exact homonyms.
As they transitioned from just tracing these signs into actually pressing them into wet clay, the physical medium itself started dictating the style. And this gave rise to cuneiform, which is a script written with a reed stylus that had a triangular end. When they pressed it into the clay instead of dragging it, it left these very distinct, angular, wedge-shaped strokes. You can clearly see those sharp, angular strokes on this economic tablet right here. Over the centuries, cuneiform evolved from those simple pictographic outlines we saw earlier into a highly complex syllabicary of about 400 different signs. It really makes you stop and realize just how complex and sophisticated this data system was getting. We are moving further and further away from those simple 3D clay tokens we started with. So here is the absolute crucial point. Phonetic signs finally allowed writing to break completely free from accounting. Just look at this seal from the Royal Cemetery of Ur, dating back to around 2600 BC. It reads Puabi, queen, and it's entirely phonetic. It has absolutely nothing to do with registering merchandise or counting grain. It's there to immortalize the name of the deceased for eternal life. And as these funerary inscriptions got longer, adding patronymics and prayers, they introduced syntax. This right here is the moment writing truly became language rather than just data, finally mimicking the natural flow of human speech. Section 4. The Alphabet Revolution. Starting around 1500 BC, in the region of present-day Lebanon, we see a revolution that literally shapes how almost all of us read and write today. This is the Proto-Semitic alphabet, the world's very first alphabet. It took advantage of this brilliant realization. The actual core sounds of any spoken language are really very few. So instead of memorizing 400 syllable signs, what if you just had one symbol for each core sound? They used a system called acrophony, where a sign represents the first letter of the word it pictures. So for example, the word for ox head was alpu. That drawing, that became the letter A. A house was betu, and that drawing became B. When you compare these two systems side by side, the technological upgrade in data processing efficiency is just staggering. The old syllabary required hundreds of complex phonetic signs, but the new Semitic alphabet, it streamlined data processing down to just 22 flexible consonantal signs. Much later, around 800 BC, the Greeks perfectly polished this system by adding letters for vowels, which are sounds where the breath channel isn't blocked. This was a massive user experience leap for ancient writers. I mean, it made speech transcription crystal clear. Suddenly, words with the exact same consonants like bad, bed, bid, and bud could be easily distinguished. And honestly, since that Greek innovation, the alphabet hasn't undergone any fundamental changes. Section 5. Handling data in abstraction. Okay, let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture. This entire 10,000-year history we've just covered, it isn't just about changing the shapes of letters. It's a continuous, multi-millennium climb up an abstraction ladder of data handling. Let's walk up those steps together. Step 1. We translated real-world commodities into arbitrary 3D tokens, separating the data from the physical location and the person who knew it. Step 2. We flattened those 3D tokens into 2D signs on clay envelopes, removing the physical manipulation of the objects. Step 3. We invented abstract numerals, conceptually separating the idea of the number from the item being counted. Step 4. Phonetics, where signs stopped picturing objects altogether and started representing the invisible sounds of words. And finally, Step 5. The ultimate segmentation of meaning, the alphabet. The media theorist Marshall McLuhan summed up this final peak of abstraction perfectly. He noted that the alphabet consists of semantically meaningless letters corresponding to semantically meaningless sounds. Really think about that for a second. When you read, you are interpreting totally abstract lines that represent isolated mouth sounds, which your brain then stitches together to form a concept. It's a double-stepped abstraction that is truly mind-bending when you break it all down. Which leaves us with this final thought. Right now, you are processing abstracted phonetic codes on a glowing screen. The internet has basically catapulted this ancient Canaanite alphabet out of wet clay and directly into cyberspace. For 10,000 years, humanity has relentlessly pursued faster, more abstract ways to process information. So, from 3D clay tokens in 8000 BC to global digital networks today, what do you think is humanity's next major technological leap in the abstraction of data? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning those everyday tools right in front of you.